Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast episode of Conversations with Yoders Farm. I'm Eldon, and I'm here with my brother Lowell. And this evening we are on our way home from a strawberry meeting that was in Charlottesville. So we're recording on the road again, and I believe Lowell's going to give us a little overview of maybe the meeting. Maybe he learned something, maybe he didn't. And then we're going to talk about strawberry plugs and plant propagation, I guess. So, Lowell, I'll let you say hello and maybe talk a little bit about the meeting here.
Hello.
This evening.
Hello, Eldon.
Hey, Lowell.
I'm here.
Good.
Yeah, it was a good meeting. It's always enjoyable hanging out with other growers, like-minded people, and experts, and had a pretty decent supper to boot. So
yeah, that was quite good. The food
got
I
to
ate was good.
Enjoy that before you went to do some work, etc. So
you learn anything interesting come
well,
up?
it's always, a lot of times this meeting in particular, this is called the PrePlant Meeting. It's kind of like a refresher course in a lot of ways. It's sort of to get strawberry growers all psyched up and jazzed up for a new season and excited a little bit.
A new planting season, per se.
Yeah, no, there's some of that just comes, with hanging out with other strawberry farmers and seeing how their last year went. It's the start of a new cycle.
Yeah.
And this meeting usually covers things that you'll be dealing with during the first few months of growing strawberries. It's kind of usually a refresher about fertilizers, plant growth, expectations, things like that. So yeah, we had two local Virginia experts, I guess you would call them. They both work down east. One gentleman spoke. He gave some, like I said, some kind of basic things to think about with planting. There were some, I believe, maybe some new folks or new growers there, so that was quite helpful for them.
Is that kind of what the original idea behind the meeting was?
The pre-plants?
Yeah, for new growers or people starting to try to figure out strawberry growing in general?
It's probably some that a new grower or someone who's interested could come and think a little bit about what they're getting into, things to think about. It's human nature. You forget things from year to year, and you need to be reminded about what's important. So I think it's kind of a brush up, too. So, yeah, and then he shared some interesting research that he's involved in, none of which is very practical at this point, but, hey, it has some merit, and you got to try things sometimes for a while before it can maybe be something that's useful in the field. The other gentleman spoke some, and I learned maybe about some new products, fungicides that might be useful to us. So that was interesting. And then two gentlemen from South Carolina, actually, which is not usual. This was kind of different, but they were on the program. The one works in extension down there, and then the other was a farmer who's been growing strawberries for, I can't remember what he said, 40 years?
Goodness.
30 years? It was a long time. He's 70.
Wow.
So
that's
he's
a lot of
the
years.
interesting thing about him, he is a meticulous record keeper, and he's very, very detailed. So his talk was interesting and fairly practical. Some interesting tips to think about. He's down south of us, actually almost to Georgia, just so in South Carolina. I believe he said he's 10 miles from Augusta National. So not everything translates. He's using a different variety of strawberry than what we use, and in fact, he's even planting a different plant type.
Yeah.
We grow something called plugs. He's using something called cutoffs, which is basically a trimmed up bare root plant.
Sure.
So anyway, there are differences, but there are also things you can learn from a grower in a different region, especially someone who has grown strawberries for that long. So that was interesting as well. Friendly chaps. I chatted with them some after the meeting, and so now I'm heading home. I took some notes, learned a few things, but mainly it just kind of gets you, I don't know, it's a new season. We're at that time of the year where we're getting ready to make strawberry beds. Hopefully next week. We've been talking to the guy that helps us do those. We've got most of our soil prep done. Could use a nice shower, rain or so, to get the soil in really good shape. So it's always the beginning of the season is kind of, it's all fresh and new, and you're thinking about the potential, I guess you could call it. So that's the state of mind that I have right now as we drive down 29 towards home.
Sure, very good. One thing I thought before we leave the topic of the meeting that we were at this evening, is that put on by the VSA? If someone was interested in maybe attending one next year, where would they go to find information about that?
Yeah, it's put on, I believe, by the VSA, and then in conjunction with the local extension.
Virginia Strawberries Association, right?
That's the VSA, yeah. And then your local county extension agent should get those notifications.
Okay.
And should be able to tell you about them. And they usually hold 3 in the state, usually one down east, Virginia Beach, usually one in Charlottesville, and then one up farther north.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that is, Fredericksburg, or I'm not sure.
Sure. Yeah, so if someone was interested in strawberries and came across this podcast, that would be the place to look for some information around.
Yeah, and usually they're
meetings.
held the end of July or the beginning of August.
All right. Well, speaking of the beginning of August, we are in the beginning of August here, and like you mentioned, the beds are about to be made. And once the beds are made, we're usually a month and a half from planting strawberries. Is that what I'm remembering? And maybe go ahead and start talking about the strawberry propagation system that we use. I'm not quite sure even what the right terminology is here.
Yeah, so it's the time of the year when you're thinking about all these things. Okay, so we grow. I think we mentioned this before, but we grow some of the plants ourselves, and then actually get the majority of them from someone else, another nursery, to grow them. We do that several reasons. One, we don't have quite the labor pool that we need to start all those little plants, and I always feel like it spreads out my risk a little bit. That way, if something happens, not all my crop, I suddenly don't have strawberry plants to plant. So we haven't received any tips yet. Those are the little baby strawberry plants, or what will become the strawberry plant. These come from Canada. They are having apparently some cooler weather up there and some production issues. So I wished I had them last week, but it's looking like it's still going to be a week or two until I receive those.
Can you talk a little bit about what a tip is? Am I correct in what I believe to be true, that it's basically cut off of a runner from a mature strawberry plant?
Yeah, a mother strawberry plant. There are fields in Canada, especially, where they grow strawberry plants for propagation. Okay, so they plant the mother plant, and then as the plant matures, I guess you'd say, they switch gears from a fruiting focus to I would like many plants like me to come behind me.
Sure, the next generation phase.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're shooting out runners, and on the end of each of those runners we call it a tip. It's basically a little couple of leaves and the start of a new strawberry plant. Now, if you left it there, it would likely go down into the soil, and it would form roots and root down, start a new strawberry plant. That's how it's designed to do.
Basically, we're clipping that, and then we start that where we want it to start.
Those get clipped up there. They are immediately put into cold storage, kept low 30s, shipped across the border in big refrigerated trucks down here. We pick them up and keep them as cool as possible, refrigerated, until we are ready to plant them. So what we do is when we get them, we have a propagation tray, which is full of a growing medium potting soil type thing. And you basically, each of those little plants, the runner where it was hooked to the mother plant, it's snipped with probably half of an inch left on it. And that's basically called a hook. Okay, and so then you just stick that down into each individual cell of your tray.
Yeah.
And that process is called hooking or sticking tips. And so that's what you do. You fill up your tray, then you immediately, within 10-15 minutes,
pretty quickly,
you take it out to a predetermined location where you have an irrigation system set up. So the only way this works is through an intense irrigation period. So these plants, these new tips in these trays are getting misted every 10 to 15 seconds every 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Some of there's kind of formula, depends on how hot it is, and anyway.
Cool.
So that's what we do. We grow. It's not quite a third, maybe a quarter of our plants that way.
Okay.
Get the other 50,000+ from a friend of ours who does the same process, but
on a little bit of a larger scale, maybe. Yeah. So they grow roots pretty quickly, but then we leave them in the trays for several weeks.
Yeah, within just a couple of days. It's a fascinating process. That intense mist cycle triggers something in the plant. I don't quite understand it. It's just amazing to me the energy that's right there in that little plant.
Yeah.
And they start shooting new little roots down, and a day after, so you stick them all in there and they're laying down. Well, a day after, you go out and look at your bed, and all the leaves are standing up.
Wow. Yeah.
It's really interesting. So then 4 weeks if you really push things along. 5 weeks, they live in the plant, the trays, and then you have a nice root ball, and then we're able to plant them with our transplanter.
So let's just pause a little bit and talk a little bit about timeline, I guess. We're here at the beginning of August. We're going to make beds here in a week or so. And then for us, it's just into September before we start planting usually? Or what is the kind of the timeline here?
Yeah, for us in the Central Virginia, that's usually kind of the month of September, strawberry planting time. And I think we've talked about it before in our strawberry varieties episode, but different varieties like a different planting date.
Yeah.
So I have our Sweet Charlies, which are growing this year, and one called Albion. I'd like to get those in just as soon as humanly possible. But, of course, you have to get the beds made and get the plants, the tips, so we can grow the plants to plant them. So around Labor Day would be great. I'd feel great about that. I don't know if that's going to happen this year or not. Then our regular variety, which we grow more of, the Chandlers, that can be planted on into probably the second half of September. if I get all of those in by the first few days of October, I'll feel fairly good about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the timeline. It's it's like this every year. There's a crunch to get the plastic picked up out of your old fields, get the fields cleaned up, work the land. We worked it deep. We work it both ways. We're trying to get any hard pan worked up and then get the soil in really good shape to make beds. The nicer beds you can make, the better your production will be, and then there's always a push to do that. And you know that the sooner you make the beds, if you can get your plants on time, then you can get planted on time, and if you're on time, it helps production.
Yeah.
And all those things. So there's
a lot of variables coming together over the next about 6 to 8 weeks to get everything in the ground.
A lot of variables, but each little thing can make a pretty big difference come April and May. And at the end of the day, it's production that affects your bottom line, and the bottom line is what pays the bills. So there is a bit of pressure to try to get things done in a timely way, but hey, that's life and farming.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way anything I've been involved with works. Let's see, is there anything else? Do we want to talk about the actual planting process we use, or do we want to hold on to that for an episode maybe?
Yeah, I figure we can do that on towards fall when we're actually in the planting stage.
All right. Well, anything else you want to talk about as far as strawberry plant propagation, or should we go ahead and wrap this episode up?
I think we could probably wrap it up. It's an interesting process. There are several large nurseries on the here on the East Coast that kind of specialize in this. There are two big suppliers in Canada that supply hundreds and hundreds of acres of strawberries all up and down the East Coast. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And
cool.
People pay the bills by growing strawberry plants. Who would have thought?
Yeah, and there's I guess farmers all along the way, people up in Canada growing the mother plants, clipping the tips. There's folks down here who stick the tips and grow plugs, and then there's people like us who plant the plugs and grow the fruit.
So there's people that come out and pick the fruit. So it's a cycle, right?
It's basically the circle of life. So, yeah. Very good. Well, thank you all for listening. If you've made it this far, we appreciate it. And if you're interested in getting further or other episodes of this podcast, you can head over to yodersfarm.com/podcast, and you can find links to subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast player there. Also, if you are a person who uses iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I believe it's called now, and if you would be so kind as to leave us a review, that would be great. No pressure there either way. We only accept 5-star reviews. So anyway, thank you all for listening, and we'll be back again in another 2 weeks with another episode. See ya.